Welcome, everybody, to your Week 10 Fantasy Football in review for the Mills and Friends League 2024. I'm your commissioner, Scott Mills, and I'm about to take you through our Week 10 results. So, I heard that people like when I talk about the standings, and since we're getting closer to the end of the year, I'm just going to start right off with going over the updated standings now after week 10. We've got Ludina's team taking now, going down to 2 and 8. Which is pretty much out of it now. That is officially going to be below 500, and then right above that, you've got Team Mills cards with the little poop emoji next to the points against. I think that the system puts this in for the person who has the most points against, which is the Mills cards team. Unfortunately for him, only slightly to be outdone by the team Ludina. Um, so only 6 points more points against, but those are the two most points against, and that's what they are both the teams that are basically out of it. Because at 7 losses, the best you can be is 500. At 8 losses, the best you can be is 2 games under 500, which is not going to be good enough to make the playoffs. Now, all the other teams, even if you're at 4 and 6, here, these three teams, Wolves Warriors, Seeking Forgiveness, No McCaff Attack, there is still an avenue because really you're only 1 game back of this. There are 3 teams that are 1 game ahead of you at 5 and 5, and 2 of those teams do have spots in the playoffs right now. So any combination of points for that are higher than those people in a tiebreaker scenario would put you ahead of those people if you're able to get even records with them. Um, so that's a possibility there. And let's see, is there anybody that's 4 and 6 that has a higher points for? We've got 1162 here for the Wolves Warriors team. That is good enough. And then 1144 here. That would be good enough for the 6th seed. If things happened to turn, it's still pretty close here where these 3 teams are really. It seems like Eggball Elite, Wolves Warriors, and Seeking Forgiveness are really the ones vying for that 6th seed. And then my team, Walker Off Win, has really fallen off. We have the lowest points for, and part of that was my own fault with who I'm starting, especially this week. I could have had like 30 more points, but I don't. It wouldn't have helped me to win this week. But yeah, so that's happening right now. Uh, and then if we look at the top half of the bracket here, you've got Spooky Season really starting to run away with things. The same record as Phoebe's Warriors, but almost 300 points more. It's just running away with the highest points for this year with 1,324. That's a lot, and you'd see, I think the system puts the laughing emoji for whoever has the most points for. I don't know why it's a laughing emoji, but that's what it is. And then, actually, second highest points scored is down here, Return of the King at 5 and 5. Gotten a little bit unlucky with some of their losses, and a few of their wins were really big scores. But definitely a dangerous team here as well. So definitely a lot to play. Lamb Chub's play along has silently been on winning here lately and has jumped all the way to the 3 seed in the league. So congratulations to them, and the Emmys team is they're still hanging in there as well, but definitely not as strong as the start to their year where they had 4 wins in a row to start, just 2 and 4 since that time. So that's the standings. Let's take a look at these matchups and see what we can glean from some of these here. So the high score for the week was Wolves Warriors beating Team Ludina 147.6 to 80. This one wasn't even close. So not too much interesting going on here. Lamar Jackson, of course, is the best quarterback fantasy-wise, and he's probably the favorite for MVP, I would think, this year, maybe. I haven't been following them too closely on with who's going to be MVP, but you got to think that he's up there with the offense that he's been putting up. Kirk Cousins, Ludina's team decided to go with Kirk Cousins this week because he had a pretty good week the last few weeks. He's beating out C.J. Stroud, but then as soon as you start him is when he does bad. That's how things usually seem to work in fantasy football, and that's how it turned out for Team Ludina's team here. And then you got running backs here. A little bit of a struggle for Wolves Warriors, but it didn't hold them back too much. When you have Jamar Chase getting almost 50 points in fantasy, 264 yards of receiving, and 3 touchdowns, absolutely massive score. It would be really hard to lose anybody who had Jamar Chase on their teams. That's almost like an automatic victory when one player gets 50 points. That's insane. He got over half of the points that Team Ludina's team scored combined for the whole week on all their players. So that was a big one. Calvin Ridley, who I gave him in a trade, had one of his rare big games. Hadn't really had a game this big since the first week of the season, I feel like. So that's working out for the Wolves Warriors team. And then over here at tight end, not a whole lot going on there. Not a whole lot going on the flexes. And yeah, that's pretty much it right there. So that's your first matchup that we're going to cover. The next one, we're going to look at Spooky Season. Spooky Season came just 1 point away from having the highest score for the week at 146.64. So, again, continuing the domination here from Spooky Season, beating Emmy's Team Emmy only with 90 points. On this week. So that was definitely a rough one. Kyler Murray, I was definitely making fun of Kyler Murray last week when he only had like 2 points, 2 fantasy points. He bounced back in a big way with 27 fantasy points going against the Jets, which have a decent defense. I don't think they're terrible defense, but yeah, the Jets definitely aren't a great team this year. But yeah, Kyler Murray, really big game there for him, and their zone offense definitely bounced back in a big way from what they were last week. Jaden Daniels, rookie quarterback, but he's been having a really good year. Washington did almost win, but Jaden Daniels didn't get any touchdowns in this, and as a result had a poor quarterback fantasy performance. We've got over here the running backs had a bounce back for Spooky Season. You had Derrick Henry with 13.6, pretty average there, and then Chase Brown with a nice 16.9 point performance. And then down here with the receivers, you had Drake London. There's just some nice scores here, just a nice balanced showing really all the way around. You had Amon-Ra St. Brown 15, 13. Here we got a 19. From James Conner. The tight end Ferguson didn't do a whole lot, but when everybody else is getting over 10 points, or quite a bit over 10 points, then you're doing pretty good. Then once again we see all the running backs with more than 13 points. So definitely big production there for Spooky Season. And rough times for Team Emmy. Definitely looking to get DK Metcalf back, so that's a big one that needs to come back. I'm not sure if there's I can't see the IR slots if anybody's on the IRs right now. But yeah, definitely Team Emmy has had better days. Saquon Barkley had a rare off day in this game as well. So that's what happened on this matchup. I believe that we're officially past the trade deadline too. So week 10 was the trade deadline for this league. So getting into week 11, the rosters are the rosters. So I believe the next matchup we'll be looking at is Lamb Chub's Play Along beating Team Millscard. This was another blowout of a game. A lot of the matches this week were blowouts. Either the team scored under 100 or they were well over 100, except for this one, which we'll get to in a little bit. But yeah, Lamb Chub's Play Along with another big win here. Going to 6-4, as we saw in the standings, into the number 3 seed. So Brock Purdy having a nice game. Joe Mixon having a nice game. Jonathan Taylor having a decent game. CeeDee Lamb, this could be a bit of an issue going forward since Dak Prescott is now done for the season. This is going to be tough for CeeDee Lamb to be getting as much production. He was still getting 10 targets, but only 6 catches for 21 yards. So he's not going to be getting as much yardage maybe as he normally would with Dak Prescott throwing to him. But yeah, just some solid performances. Travis Kelce's been bouncing back lately. Had a nice tight end game for him there. But yeah, there's still some issues on this roster. The defense helped out a lot. The kicker helped out a lot. But yeah, only 1 point from Xavier Worthy. He was playing 2 tight ends with Cade Otton, only getting 6 points there. The 5 from CeeDee Lamb. But other than that, everything was there to hold the boat floating strong for Lamb Chub's Play Along. For Team Millscards, this was about the nail in the coffin for them, I think, as well. Mahomes, just another average performance. Mahomes hasn't really had any big quarterback performances this year. He's been not great. So where you drafted him, when before the season began, you definitely expected a lot better production out of Patrick Mahomes. Let's see. He is the number 14 fantasy quarterback, so that's not even. There's only 12 teams in the league, and you can only start one quarterback, so he is outside of quarterback 1 range even. Definitely rough there for him. Chuba Hubbard with the big game, one of the lone big games for the Team Millscards. And the Tyreek Hill, really, yeah, he got a touchdown this week. Since Tua's been back, his numbers have been a little bit better in fantasy, but he still had a very disappointing season, all things considered. Yeah, I don't know if the age is starting to catch up to Tyreek Hill, or if it's just like teams are catching on to what Miami's offense is doing better, or what it is with that, where things are not going as well there for Tyreek Hill. But yeah, it's just the way that things work out sometimes in fantasy. Dalton Kincaid, everybody always talks about how good he is, but he definitely does put up his fair share of clunkers. And then starting 2 tight ends here with Hunter Henry, and he just didn't do anything really. Now Tank Dell, he was alright. I believe that their number 1 receiver, Nico Collins, will be back next week, so we'll see what that does for Tank Dell in terms of his performances going forward. So yeah, that's about it in terms of this matchup here. So we'll head on over to the next one, which is Return of the King versus Walker Off Win, which is my team. So you're going to see some issues here with the Walker Off Win team, but let's start off with the Return of the King team and see what they did so well to get 121 in terms of points. We had Jalen Hurts with a really nice game, Bijan Robinson with a really nice game here. The 2 heavy hitters, Kamara had a nice game as well. The receivers are under 10 points. Tight end was okay. But yeah, really just those 2 big heavy hitters at the start are what really fueled this 121. And then just average-ish production out of the other guys. Um, so yeah, nobody else even over 10. Uh, well, except for Kamara there, Bijan Robinson, and Jalen Hurts. Now over onto the Walker-Off win side. Why are they only at 80 points? Well, Aaron Rodgers, you saw that one immediately. And I've scrolled through here. Nothing from Nico Collins. Nico Collins, they had him as questionable. It was out of IR. They put the projected points on the board. They're like, we really think he's going to play. And he was playing Sunday night, so I was like, all right, I'm going to put him in there, and we're going to have Marvin Harrison on the bench who's playing a 4 o'clock game, and we'll catch the updates and see if anything's changed by then, or if it's like a close game by then maybe I'll put Marvin Harrison back in. But yeah, it still showed him as questionable before the 4:30 game started, and so I left Nico Collins in, and then at 7 p.m. they're like, "Whoops, he's out. He's not playing." So then I was like, "Well, I've already lost anyway because I'm even by this point, like I could tell that I was going to lose by at least 30 points. I ended up losing by 40 points, so that was a big issue there. Um, and if you look, Russell Wilson had 19. Should have started him, and then, I should have just stayed with Marvin Harrison, who has been very up and down this year in terms of his performances, whether he'll be good or not. Like, he's had his fair share of clunkers where he's put up less than 5 fantasy points in several weeks, but then he's had a few weeks where he's been really good. Like, today was only 13.9, which is decent, but he's had some 20-point performances too, so definitely hard to predict there, which can be kind of frustrating for sure. So let's try to do the math a little bit here. 13.9 and then 19 minus 3 is 16, so 16 and 14 is about 30 more points I would have gotten with those two starting, which would have been about 110 points, which still puts me like 10 points shy of winning. So even if I had done my optimal lineups, it wouldn't have mattered. Not good though. Okay, so we got 2 more matchups, I believe, to go over. Another one with was kind of a blowout-ish because no McCaffrey only with 82 points to PB's Warriors 105.88. Starting Tua, and Tua not having a good fantasy performance. He has not been too good. So definitely I could see why Chansey wants Tua to do good. See back to some of the form that we saw from him last year, and it just hasn't been there. Joe Burrow with the big fantasy performance with 31 points over here really helped to propel no McCaffrey, but really that's like what, 30% of the points here. Well, over 30% of the points. Yeah, that's like 35% of the points or something over here was all in Joe Burrow. So that was quite something. It's more like 40% actually. What am I thinking in terms of my math? Okay, it doesn't matter. That's a big chunk. 31 out of 50 is, or 31 out of 80 is a big chunk of points. Yeah, Tank Bigsby didn't do anything. The running backs were terrible there. Wide receivers didn't do much. Tight end was pretty good. And Christian McCaffrey finally being back. So it becomes McCaffrey, and yeah, it was decent. 13.7 is not terrible. He was definitely the third best fantasy scorer on his team. So there is that with Christian McCaffrey. But yeah, nothing much else. And over here for the PB's Warriors team, we've got Irving for Tampa Bay, who had a nice game. And then Mark Andrews has been, it took him a while to warm up this season, but he's certainly starting to be on fire now and do well. So, and then more Tampa Bay. He had two Tampa Bay running backs going, and they both did pretty well for him, which is pretty interesting. You don't see people usually start two running backs from the same team uh, most of the time and have it work out. But it did work out this week, and he happened to be facing the right opponent, not one of the people that was getting 120 or 140 scores. You get one of the 80-point scorers that he was going up against. So it all worked out there. All right, we're on to our last matchup of the week. The only really close matchup for this week. The Seeking Forgiveness team gets a huge win against Eggball Elite, getting them up to 4-6 and back into fantasy relevance in this league. Let's see how the things shook out in this really razor thin matchup. We had Josh Allen with 20 points, a nice fantasy performance there. Sam Darnold not doing great for Minnesota in this one, throwing 3 interceptions and no touchdowns. So that's pretty tough there. Over here, running backs were decent there. Up here with James Cook and Breece Hall. And then Kyren Williams for the Rams, not as good. Ramondre Stevenson, not as good. Pretty even matchups there, but definitely the quarterback situation and difference was a pretty big difference here. But actually, the person with the worst quarterback performance ended up losing. So let's go down and see. Keon Coleman not playing. There's the 0 spot. And that was a huge hurt there for them. It might have been a similar-ish situation to what I had with Nico Collins, where it was showing that he was going to play, and then last minute, whoops, he's out. There's something wrong with him, and we didn't know what it was, which seems to be something that has been coming up this season. It's been hard to stay on top of those things for sure. Over here, you had George Pickens with a big game as well, which really helped propel to that couple-point victory. So yeah, that was basically it. And then over here you had Philly's defense had a really big game. So really the main part of the score here was Philly's defense and Josh Allen. and the rest of them were kind of tough. Let's see, on the bench, was there any receivers that did better? Keenan Allen was on the bench. Could have started him. Dallas Goedert was back. But yeah, it was better than Gesicki, but yeah, just a tough one there. Very tough one there for Eggball Elite. Anytime you lose by just a couple points, that's pretty tough. Because usually there's a guy on your bench that could have given you the win, and you were thinking about starting them too, and you're just like, man, I wish I had done that. Alright, so that's it for our recap this week. Thank you for watching along or listening if you're doing that. And I will be back next week with some more fantasy football coverage. We've got 4 weeks left in the regular season before the playoffs start. So we're definitely in the home stretch coming along there. All right.